The case of Rachel Maiden's disappearance became one of the most talked about stories in the media. A young and accomplished dentist, well respected within her community and adored by her patients, vanished without a trace from her upscale home in Brentwood. What remained behind was her 2-year-old daughter, left alone in an empty house, along with disturbing signs of a struggle, details that raised more questions than they answered, shrouded in an air of fear and mystery. What really happened behind closed doors in this seemingly perfect home? How did someone who lived in luxury and appeared successful by all measures end up in such a perilous situation? Rachel Liliana Maidens, née Tucker, was born on March 19, 1979, in Nashville, Tennessee, the state's vibrant capital and largest city. She was the youngest of 2 children in a prominent and well-off family of healthcare professionals. Her father, Richard, was a distinguished and respected pharmacist, while her mother, Bethany, ran a private pediatric practice. Rachel grew up alongside her older brother, with whom she shared a warm and close-knit relationship. Their parents doted on both children, ensuring they had the best education and opportunities to nurture their talents. Rachel attended an elite Catholic private school for girls, where she earned a reputation as one of the top students in her class. Following her high school graduation, Rachel easily secured admission to a prestigious college in Birmingham, Alabama. From there, she went on to enroll at a renowned state medical university, where she earned a scholarship. During her university years, she also developed a strong passion for tennis, excelling in the sport and winning numerous awards. Rachel's professional path became clearer when she pursued her specialization in dentistry. She enrolled in a private dental school in Florida, graduating with distinction in 2005. Her impressive credentials led her to a residency at the Children's National Medical Center in Washington, D.C. During this time, Rachel began publishing academic papers in medical journals and participated in both national and international conferences, gaining recognition as an outstanding young professional. However, a dark shadow fell over Rachel's life in 2004 while she was still a student. Her father, the well-known pharmacist, was accused of forging prescriptions and illegally distributing controlled substances. Richard was arrested at work and taken into custody, where he was held until trial. Tragically, he passed away from a heart attack in his jail cell, unable to cope with the stress and humiliation of the accusations. The Maidens family's troubles did not end there. Rachel, along with her mother and brother, found themselves under investigation. Their financial accounts were frozen, and they were restricted from traveling outside the country until the inquiry was concluded. The investigation stretched on for over a year. 2 of Richard's colleagues were eventually arrested, and Richard himself was posthumously exonerated, with formal apologies extended to the family. The emotional aftermath of her father's tragic passing, the drawn-out investigation, and the stain of public scandal had a profound impact on Rachel Maiden's mental and emotional well-being. She fell into a prolonged depression, appearing overwhelmed and broken. Despite this dark period, a few years later, Rachel managed to reclaim her life. She opened a private dental practice in Brentwood, a peaceful and affluent suburb of her hometown of Nashville, located in Williamson County, Tennessee. Her career took off at an impressive pace. Rachel became known as a highly skilled and innovative orthodontist, attracting clients from neighboring cities and even from other states. Her dental clinic quickly gained a reputation as one of the most advanced and well-equipped facilities in all of Tennessee, admired for its cutting-edge technology and top-notch service. From a young age, Rachel was known for her striking beauty, drawing attention from many admirers. Tall, athletic, and graceful, with long blonde hair and a dazzling smile, she effortlessly turned heads. Yet despite the interest she received, Rachel remained focused on her studies and career ambitions, putting off serious relationships and family plans until she was firmly established professionally. In the late 2000s, Rachel met a man named Reynolds Maiden. Reynolds was nearly 8 years her senior, but the age gap never became an obstacle for their connection. Born and raised in a modest town in Georgia, Reynolds came from a middle-class background. He attended a local high school before enrolling in a technical college and later went on to study at Clark University in Atlanta. After earning his degree, Reynolds landed a job as a sales manager at a major pharmaceutical company. His career rapidly progressed, and in 2007, he was transferred to the company's Nashville branch, where he assumed a senior management role. By the time Rachel and Reynolds crossed paths, both were well established in their careers. They earned impressive salaries, lived comfortably, and were free to indulge in the luxuries that success afforded them. Reynolds was charming and intelligent, a well-read man who could engage in conversations on a wide range of topics. His polished demeanor and friendly disposition made him appealing to nearly everyone he met. He first encountered Rachel at a gathering hosted by mutual friends, and he was instantly captivated by the sophisticated blonde with impeccable style. Rachel was equally taken with Reynolds, and their romantic relationship blossomed rapidly. By 2009, Reynolds proposed, and Rachel joyfully accepted his heartfelt offer. After their lavish wedding, the newlyweds, with the support of Rachel's family, purchased a stunning mansion situated in Brentwood's most exclusive neighborhood. The home had everything they needed for a comfortable and secure lifestyle. The surrounding area was filled with charming parks, pristine golf courses, and high-end bars and restaurants frequented by the affluent community. Just 15 minutes away by car was a bustling business district, home to the headquarters of several major corporations. Reynolds' office was located in one of those corporate buildings, while Rachel's private clinic stood nearby in a separate, state-of-the-art facility. Their luxurious home was nestled within the grounds of a prestigious private club, and the neighborhood itself was known as one of the safest and most desirable areas in the state. In late 2010, the couple welcomed their daughter, Natalie. Their happiness appeared complete and limitless. Rachel, a devoted yet ambitious mother, didn't stay away from her career for long. Despite her short maternity leave, she continued to oversee the operations of her clinic and returned to work full-time less than a year later. By mid-2012, Reynolds' behavior started to take a troubling turn. He began drinking heavily, claiming it was the only way to unwind from the pressures of his demanding job. Rachel's efforts to have meaningful conversations with him about his growing alcohol use led nowhere. Reynolds stubbornly denied that he had developed a drinking problem, insisting he could quit any time he wanted. As the months went by, Rachel became increasingly worried. She suspected that Reynolds' issues went beyond alcohol and that he might be using other, more dangerous substances. His moods grew erratic, and he exhibited episodes of sudden, irrational aggression. His behavior became more unpredictable, and at times genuinely frightening. Any attempt to discuss the situation either resulted in explosive arguments or was met with complete denial, leaving Rachel feeling helpless and deeply concerned. The negative changes in Reynolds' behavior inevitably started affecting his professional life. His performance at work took a nosedive, and after several warnings from his superiors, he ended up losing his job. Yet this serious consequence didn't prompt any self-reflection or inspire him to get his life back on track. On the contrary, Reynolds' drinking only escalated, and he was frequently in a state where he was hardly coherent or fully aware of his surroundings, about 3 months before the incident that changed everything. Rachel confided in her mother about something deeply troubling. She had discovered that Reynolds had been secretly withdrawing large sums of money from their joint bank account and transferring them into his personal account. Rachel's investigation into these transactions revealed that the transfers began shortly after she had threatened to divorce him during one of their heated arguments, warning him that he would be left with nothing. It seemed clear that Reynolds, possibly fearing that she might follow through, was taking measures to secure some of their shared finances for himself. In January 2013, Reynolds showed up at a Brentwood restaurant in an extremely agitated and unsteady state, clearly under the influence of some kind of prohibited substances. His behavior was erratic and confrontational. He harassed other patrons and seemed to be spoiling for a fight. Alarmed, the restaurant manager called the emergency services, reporting the escalating disturbance. Only minutes later, she made a follow-up call, explaining that when staff tried to escort Reynolds out of the building, several high-caliber bullets fell out of his coat pocket, along with a small container of unidentified pills. When law enforcement arrived, they spoke to Reynolds, but surprisingly let him off with just a verbal warning. On the back seat of his car, officers spotted a shotgun, which Reynolds had a permit for, but he couldn't give a coherent explanation as to why he had brought the firearm with him to the restaurant that night. As Reynolds attempted to get behind the wheel and drive away, the officers intervened, preventing him from doing so in his intoxicated state. They suggested calling his wife, Rachel, to come pick him up. In response, Reynolds' demeanor shifted dramatically. He became desperate and begged them not to contact her. His behavior resembled that of a frightened child fearing punishment. He repeatedly pleaded, insisting that Rachel would be furious if she found out, and promised that nothing like this would ever happen again. Who actually came to get Reynolds that night remains unclear. He made a phone call to someone, and roughly 15 minutes later, a car pulled up to the restaurant. Reynolds quickly got in and left. None of the witnesses got a good look at the driver, but some accounts suggest that it may have been a former colleague of his. On the evening of April 21, 2013, the Brentwood Police Department received a distressing call from a concerned woman who was unable to get in touch with her daughter all day and was growing increasingly worried about her daughter's safety, as well as that of her young granddaughter. The caller was Bethany, Rachel's mother. She knew all too well about her son-in-law Reynolds' struggles with alcohol and dangerous substances and how his behavior became unpredictable and reckless under their influence. Bethany pleaded with the police to urgently send officers to her daughter's home to check on the situation. She shared that Reynolds had been on the brink of a breakdown, often making alarming threats, including harming himself or lashing out at Rachel. Bethany also mentioned that her granddaughter Natalie, who was only 2.5 years old, was likely in the house. The police responded swiftly and arrived at the residence, but no one answered when they knocked on the front door. The curtains on the ground floor were tightly drawn, making it impossible to see inside. However, the unmistakable sound of a child crying loudly could be heard from within the house, raising serious concerns for the child's safety. Officers decided to force entry through the garage door to get inside. Once inside, their calls went unanswered. Following the sound of the distressed child, they made their way deeper into the house. There, in a hallway, they found Natalie, sitting on the floor and sobbing for her mother. At her young age, she couldn't explain what had happened, but the fear and confusion in her eyes were evident. As the officers moved down the hallway, they noticed blood splattered on one of the walls. They followed the grim trail, which led to a horrifying scene in the living room. Rachel, aged 34, was found lifeless on the floor, and a shotgun lay discarded on the nearby couch. An investigation later revealed that she had suffered 9 gunshot wounds, in addition to 2 blasts of buckshot fired into her back. There was no chance for Rachel to survive the brutal attack. The hallway, entryway, living room, and even the bedroom door were covered in blood. It was clear that the violent act had unfolded throughout these areas, with Rachel being pursued and attacked as if she were a target in a shooting range. After the assault, the perpetrator had wrapped her body in a blanket and attempted to clean up the bloodstains from the floors and walls. However, there was far too much blood, and the effort was quickly abandoned. The suspect then fled the scene. The prime and only suspect in this horrifying crime was Reynolds, who was immediately declared a wanted fugitive. Thankfully, the child, though traumatized, was physically unharmed, but the emotional impact was obvious. It appeared that she had witnessed the entire ordeal, a terrifying experience for someone so young. Bethany, devastated and in shock upon hearing the news, rushed to her daughter's home to take her granddaughter into her care. The high-end country club where the crime took place was swarming with law enforcement. Officers canvassed the neighborhood, questioning residents in hopes that someone had seen something or could provide clues about the suspect's whereabouts. The search for Reynolds was extensive, involving aerial support with helicopters, as authorities considered him extremely dangerous due to his unstable behavior. His photograph was broadcast during the evening news, along with a public plea for any information about his location. The community was also warned that he might still be armed. During a search of the house, investigators found a note, more accurately, a full letter written by the suspect. In the letter, he offered an apology to his young daughter, although he never explicitly mentioned what he had done. Reynolds also expressed his gratitude to his mother-in-law and Rachel's other family members, thanking them for their kindness and support over the years. He wrote about his love and appreciation for them, but then launched into a tirade about how his wife had made his life unbearable. He described how she allegedly belittled and pressured him, and how things had only gotten worse after he lost his job, reaching a breaking point he claimed he could no longer endure. Throughout the letter, Reynolds placed blame on Rachel, painting her as domineering from the start of their relationship and claiming she had systematically broken him down and controlled him. He justified his addiction to hard liquor and powerful substances as his only way to cope with the pressure. He insisted that his substance abuse and job loss were consequences of being trapped in a marriage with what he described as a tyrannical partner. His writing was erratic, at times disjointed, and he frequently repeated himself, but the overall message was a clear and desperate attempt to deflect responsibility. The letter also contained a request that custody of his daughter be granted to his mother-in-law, who he believed would be a loving and capable guardian. For investigators, the letter was essentially a confession, leaving no doubt about who had committed the crime. However, forensic experts speculated that the message could be a final farewell, raising concerns that the suspect might have harmed himself after fleeing the scene. Despite this possibility, the search efforts pressed on as Reynolds was still considered a significant threat to the public. In the trunk of Rachel Maiden's car, which had been abandoned near the house, officers found a duffel bag containing nearly $100,000 in cash. It was clear that he had planned to escape with the money, but for reasons unknown, left it behind. Detectives also discovered that on the night before the tragic incident, Reynolds had made a lengthy phone call to his attorney, though the content of that conversation remained undisclosed. The very next day, as police continued their extensive search for Rachel Maiden, he unexpectedly emerged from hiding, approaching the officers with his hands up and expressing his willingness to cooperate with the investigation. Without resistance, he allowed himself to be handcuffed and was escorted to the station for questioning. Right away, Reynolds began blaming the victim for all his misfortunes, claiming that she had subjected him to years of psychological torment and constant humiliation. He wept openly, describing how he had gone from being a successful corporate executive to an unemployed alcoholic who had become a local laughingstock. He recounted wandering the streets aimlessly, too terrified to return home to face his wife. It turned out that for the past 6 months, neighbors had filed multiple complaints about Reynolds's erratic and disturbing behavior. He had been known to approach strangers on the streets aggressively, trying to start conflicts. He had also been cited several times for driving under the influence, yet curiously, his driver's license had not been suspended, which many found puzzling. In March 2013, a heavily intoxicated Reynolds crashed his car into a transformer station, leaving an entire neighborhood without power. Just a week before the tragic incident, neighbors reported seeing him walking around his property with a shotgun. On April 15th, he approached a neighboring home with the weapon, terrifying the children playing on the lawn and their parents, who promptly called the police. Reynolds was arrested but released the next day without any charges, likely due to bailing his way out of the situation. Former colleagues of Reynolds reported that his behavior had started to change dramatically about 6 months prior to the incident. He often blamed his erratic conduct on family issues and repeatedly complained about his wife, though no one believed that Rachel, described as refined and kind, could have been the tyrant he made her out to be. Just before the new year, Reynolds caused a scene at a high-end restaurant in a 5-star hotel where he and his wife were dining. After getting severely drunk at the bar, he erupted in a violent outburst when Rachel tried to take him home, hurling glasses and bottles against the walls and shouting threats to harm her. Although the incident was hushed up at the time, word quickly spread to his employer's management, and Reynolds was terminated from his job. This was not the first time his behavior had raised red flags at work. During the trial, his former employer admitted that Reynolds's dependency on controlled substances had been an open secret for some time. The company had offered him support and treatment options, but he had refused all help. In the investigation, it was uncovered that Reynolds had been in frequent contact with an old flame, Larissa Farley, over the past several months. It seemed he had developed strong feelings for her once again, and there were indications that he had been planning to run away with her. Authorities suspected that he had been withdrawing money from his joint account with Rachel to fund a new life with Larissa somewhere far away. However, there was no evidence to suggest that Larissa had any knowledge of or involvement in the crime against Rachel. Detectives quickly tracked down Larissa and brought her in for questioning. She appeared genuinely shocked when she learned what her lover had done. Larissa insisted that Reynolds had always been a kind and thoughtful man, claiming he must have acted out of extreme desperation. She reiterated that Reynolds often complained about the pressure and emotional strain his wife placed on him, implying that Rachel might have driven him to his breaking point. Reynolds was charged with the premeditated crime against his wife and with endangering the life of his young daughter, who was in the home at the time. Additionally, he faced accusations of tampering with evidence, as he had attempted to clean up bloodstains. Investigators also believed that he had wrapped Rachel's body in a blanket, likely intending to dispose of it, but either abandoned the plan due to a lack of physical strength or fear of being seen by neighbors. He was held in custody with bail set at an astonishing $2 million. Reynolds maintained his innocence, claiming that Rachel had provoked him. By June 2013, his attorney successfully petitioned to have the bail reduced to $700,000, which Reynolds posted using money from his shared account with Rachel. Rachel's mother, Bethany, fought hard to prevent this, but Reynolds' skilled defense attorney managed to secure his client's access to those funds. Despite the severity of the accusations, the 42-year-old was released on house arrest, confined to the very mansion where he had committed the crime against his wife. Later, the conditions were further relaxed, and he was placed under a travel restriction instead, allowing him to roam freely around town while awaiting trial. The trial date was set for September 2014, almost a year and a half later. Bethany's repeated efforts to challenge this lenient arrangement were dismissed. The only inconvenience Reynolds faced during this period was having to wear an ankle monitor to track his movements. Additionally, a court order prohibited him from contacting his daughter or any of Rachel's family members, either directly or indirectly. About 6 months later, Bethany finally succeeded in getting a court order that barred Reynolds from using the assets he had accumulated with her late daughter and revoked his right to the mansion. However, this didn't stop Reynolds from brazenly returning to the house and taking whatever he deemed valuable, including high-priced possessions. His audacity outraged everyone, and contempt of court charges were filed against him. Yet, his defense attorney managed to have these charges dismissed, once again maneuvering Reynolds out of trouble. Reynolds seemed to slip through the cracks of the legal system repeatedly, using the funds he had effectively stolen from Rachel's personal and shared accounts to cover his mounting legal expenses. Despite Bethany and her family's efforts to recover or freeze the stolen money, they were unsuccessful. Reynolds often appeared in court with a smug grin, reveling in the sense that he was untouchable. A dangerous individual, responsible for a brutal crime committed in front of a young child, was allowed to remain free. Witnesses repeatedly highlighted Reynolds' history of substance abuse, noting how he became erratic, aggressive, and uncontrollable when under the influence. Yet each time, his attorney managed to convince the judges that Reynolds posed no significant threat and should continue to have the freedom to walk the streets. Despite his lawyer's best efforts, Reynolds was arrested again in December 2013. This time, he was caught while under the influence of controlled substances, attempting to break into a stranger's home. He rambled incoherently, alternating between asking for help, making threats, and falsely identifying himself as a police officer, demanding the occupants open the door immediately. This incident was severe enough that his bail privileges were revoked, and he was held in custody until trial. Under Tennessee law, the collection of charges Reynolds faced could have led to the death penalty, and for once, it seemed he might finally be held accountable. But in mid-September 2014, just a week before the trial was set to begin, Reynolds shocked everyone by agreeing to a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, evidence tampering, and endangering the welfare of his young daughter. The court took his cooperation and guilty plea into consideration, and the sentence handed down was unexpectedly lenient. Reynolds was given 25 years in prison, a significantly reduced term from the 60 years the prosecution had sought. Furthermore, his lawyer negotiated eligibility for parole after just 15 years, contingent on good behavior. In the courtroom, the convicted offender offered an apology to his daughter and Rachel's family, but his words came across as insincere. Rachel's mother, Bethany, viewed the court's decision as a personal affront and an insult to the memory of her beloved daughter. Feeling the pain of a justice system that seemed to fail her, Bethany made numerous attempts to appeal the sentence in higher courts. She also participated in several interviews, hoping to draw public attention to what she considered a miscarriage of justice. As of now, the sentence for Reynolds remains unchanged. Rachel's daughter, Natalie, has been placed under the care of her maternal grandmother, Bethany. According to the terms of the estate, Natalie will inherit all of her late mother's assets when she reaches adulthood. That's it for today. If you found it thought-provoking, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay updated. Leave your thoughts in the comments, and as always, stay safe, stay smart, and keep seeking the truth.